All right, y'all, I'm so excited because I get to sit down with my new friend, Paula Farris. Paula, thanks for being here.
Oh my gosh. I feel like we already know one another through
I know.
Rachel Cruze. So we're basically best friends. We just didn't know it until now.
I know. We just get to live it out on camera now. You know, one of the things that I love about you, Paula, is you have such a cool story. And I feel like I've gotten to see some of your story publicly through following you on Instagram, being a fan and so on, but also through Rachel and hearing a little bit of your backstory. So you have had some amazing experiences. You've worked for ABC News. You've worked for The View. You have a somewhat new book called Called Out. But let's just start with a little bit of the last few years. You've gone through some crazy transitions, transitions that I would say were super brave. Talk to us a little bit about the backstory that led to some of those major decisions, and then I want to dig into your book.
Yeah, somebody once said that the thing that she took away from my story was that I like to do things that don't make sense. So I guess that might be a theme. It might not make sense. It might feel a little crazy. And oftentimes you talked about a lot of these 180s, and that's really how it's felt for me. I've been doing 180s. They're always scary. People have called me crazy. I've thought they were crazy, but it was always based on what I really felt God was calling me to do in that season. Yeah. So the first 180 was probably back in 2017, 2018, and I was at the height of my career. You just mentioned I've done some pretty cool things professionally.
Yeah.
I worked at ABC News for 9 years, and while there, I co-anchored Good Morning America weekends for 4 years, and I also co-hosted The View. And I just had this sense, Christy, that I needed to slow down. I had put all my eggs in this career basket, this vocational basket, to the detriment of everything and everyone around me. And I got to a point where, yes, I'm at the pinnacle of my career, but what good is it for a man to gain the world and lose his soul in the process? And that's really what I felt like. I felt like I was pursuing this call on my life, but I looked around and my values were clashing with my choices. And I was burnout. I still loved what I did, but that may have been the problem. I loved it so much that it had become a bit of an addiction for me. It was my narcotic of choice. So I felt God really telling me to slow down, to step away from anchoring Good Morning America and also The View. And I was like, wait, God, but like, this is my calling. This is what I'm supposed to do, right? Didn't you call me to do this? So why would you call me out? And that's what the book's about, like this God calling me out of a space where I was, doing things for the wrong reasons, where my purpose and identity were in something that that changes and shifts, such as a job. So, but Christy, you even mentioned it, you're brave and courageous. Well, I wasn't that brave and I wasn't that courageous because God literally had to extract me out of that situation. I went through like 7 months of just heartache and tragedy to the point where if I wasn't going to slow down, God physically had to slow me down. So I had a miscarriage with an emergency surgery. And then I had a freak accident at work where I was concussed and knocked out of work for 3 weeks. And then the day I was cleared to go back to work, Christy, I got in a head-on car crash. And then I got developed influenza, which turned into pneumonia. And I was like, all right, God, I'll slow down.
I get it.
So,
I get it.
Yep.
I get the message.
Thanks. But I slowed down. It was in that space when I stepped away from those high-profile gigs into something much more, it was a demotion, but it was self-inflicted. I realized I didn't know who I was outside of it because I had been Paula Farris, the, Good Morning America anchor and the co-host of The View. And like, this is my purpose. This is my calling. And then when that shifted, I was like, who am I? Who am I outside of that? And so it really just set me on this path. And then, I came to another kind of, another moment during the pandemic. I knew that my time at ABC was ending. This was last year. And my husband and I came down to South Carolina because my sister lives here. And we thought we'd come down here for 2 weeks. And God was like, yeah, I want you to stay. And we're like, for what? I knew my sister was here, but it was one of those moments where we just had a peace that this was what we were supposed to do. And it's been really awesome it's scary. That's the thing. Like when you're called to do something, there's always an element, I think, of fear. And we think if we're scared to do something, then that's our intuition oftentimes calling us off, Christy. So, like, hey, don't do that. But we were really scared to stay down here. We didn't know what was on the other side. But I think that's what, like, if you truly are living a life of faith, you have to step out in faith, not knowing what's on the other side. And that's when God shows up and just shows off. So now I'm totally gone from ABC. And, I feel like God's just given me this permission slip. Like, you can do new things in different seasons. And God calls us to do different things in different seasons. We shouldn't get too attached to that one thing that we think that we're created to do, because when that thing changes, if our purpose and identity are all wrapped up in that, we're not going to know who we are. So
Yeah.
it's like, for me, it's been this journey of finding out, who am I outside of what I do? Because who I am isn't going to change, but what I do it will change. So I'm trying new things. Things that I'm scared to do, because but it's almost like this, I've been given this permission slip to try it, because I know my worth isn't in my job. I know my worth isn't in the doing. I know who I am, and I know what's not going to change about me. And so that gives me permission to take risks.
Well, it's so interesting. You brought up so many good points, and I want to circle back to several things that you said. One of the things that you said that I think is so powerful, it's simple, but it's also difficult to live out. And that's this idea that our worth is not in our work. I understand that. You understand that. I bet a lot of people watching and listening understand that. And yet, it's very difficult to disconnect yourself from that in the day-to-day way you evaluate yourself, or even making a huge decision like you did to leave New York for South Carolina and these high-profile jobs.
A small town in South Carolina, by the way. We're not in the metropolis.
Right. And so what you were familiar with, and all of the accolades, high profile, that this is what I do, and even the goodness of what you did mattered at that time, and you were called to it at that time. And so to disconnect yourself from that and go, okay, God, I know that is not who I am, but I also find joy in that, find purpose in that, and so on. And let's just relay this too, to not just a career. Women might say, oh, I'm called to be a mom, or I'm called to stay home in this season. That's great. And still, your worth is not in that role either, because to your point, anything that can shift and change is not a true place that we get our identity from. So I think it's so impressive that you were able to not just understand it intellectually, but even if God had to extract you through bravery, through God leading you, actually take steps to live that out. And you were in South Carolina, and you have a completely different life now than you had 2 years ago, experiencing the fruit of that, but it was only through those steps of faith, like you said, that you were able to do that. So I love that you brought that up. I want to circle back to something else that you said too that I think is really interesting. It seemed crazy. People thought you were crazy. It didn't make sense. And I want you to talk a little bit more about that, because, for anyone watching or listening that's a believer, we understand that the Bible is full of examples of things that are impractical, illogical, impossible, don't make sense, seem crazy to outsiders. And yet when God calls us to do that in our own life here on this earth, we feel like, oh, it must be wrong. People don't get it. I'm scared, to your point. This must be a sign I shouldn't do it. How did you stay in tune with the sense that what you were doing was right, even if other people didn't get it, and even if it felt a little crazy? Because I bet a lot of people can relate to that.
I thought I was crazy, Christy. It wasn't just other people around me thinking that I was crazy. I thought I was a lunatic.
I've been there.
But what I always go back to, do you feel a peace in your spirit about it? And if you feel a peace in your spirit, then proceed. And if you don't feel a peace, then pause. And I think just it takes a while to figure out that peace in your spirit. Fear has nothing to do with that. Fear is normal. Fear is something. And that's one thing I had to reconcile, that I can experience peace, that I'm supposed to do this thing, that this is really, it's on my heart. I can't, God won't let it go away. He keeps bringing it up, and I can still be scared. I can feel those two things at the same time. And I think so often in faith cultures, we're taught that we have to conquer our fear, and we have to never feel it again.
Perfect love drives.
Exactly.
If you're scared, something's wrong with you.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with you. Fear is normal. And so I had to get used to that feeling of fear is normal. I can be scared as hell to do something, but have a peace in my spirit. If I have a peace, I'm going to proceed, and fear is part of it. And I just look at the examples, throughout the Bible, throughout history, where people are part of stepping out, and part of the journey, and part of courage and bravery is pressing into your fear. Everyone experiences fear, and there's nothing wrong with you if you feel it. What has helped me incredibly is looking at someone like Joshua, who was called to take down the impregnable walls of Jericho. Okay, those walls were were formidable. You couldn't take him down. He felt ill-equipped. He felt unqualified. He felt totally unready. And then in Joshua 1:9, God says, Joshua, have I not commanded you to be strong and courageous? Don't be afraid and don't be discouraged, for the Lord your God's with you everywhere you go. And it's the first part of that verse that often we leave out. Have I not commanded you? And I was like, oh my gosh, God's commanding us. It's not like God, he's saying, Christy, have I not commanded you to be strong, to be courageous? So he commands us, but then he gives us assurance that I know you're going to be discouraged. I know you're going to be scared, but don't be afraid. Don't be discouraged. I'm going to be with you. He promises he'll be with you, but we have to take that first step. It's like when you program directions in your GPS, okay? Like you start out and you're like, it doesn't know like where your origin is. Am I supposed to take a left out of the parking lot or am I supposed to take a right? And you take a right and it reroutes you and you're like, oh, dang it, I took the wrong turn. I started out wrong. But it's like that in our faith journeys, but just also our lives. We need to take a step. You're not going to know what direction you're supposed to go in until you start moving. And so often people will say, I'm going to wait on the Lord.
Yes.
I'm not going to do anything.
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry.
I've talked about this. Yes.
We are commanded to press into that fear. It's a dance. We take a step. God takes a step. We can't see the next chapter. I am nosy as heck. I read the last page of every book I read, okay? I spoil it for myself, but that's not how it works with God. He doesn't give us the peek into the next chapter. But what he does give us is a peace in our spirit. If we have a peace, we proceed, then we expect and anticipate fear along the way. I want to circle back, and you talked about some of your listeners, I feel called to be a mom. I feel called to this. We have different seasons of vocation. I feel in this season that God has really called me to be very present with my children, something that I've not been. We're doing this right now. My kids are in school. So if I'm doing something professionally, I'm trying to make sure, I'm trying to set boundaries. I'm doing it when my kids are in school. I've really kind of cleared my plate. I'm only putting things on my plate that I'm passionate about instead of my kids fitting into my career. Like anything that I choose to do, I want it to fit into being a mom first, okay?
Yeah.
But we go through, and so often women are scared and men are scared to pump the brakes or to take a step back because A, society doesn't see there's any value in it, right? B, we have a hard time seeing value in it ourselves. And then C, oftentimes we're intimidated that if we step back or we step away, we can't get back in. I can't get back in the workforce. But that's the thing, like we have to give ourselves permission to branch out and try new things. We have to give ourselves permission, A, knowing that my worth isn't in this gig. My worth is not in being a mom. My worth is not in being a broadcaster. My worth is not in being a teacher. My worth and identity are separate from those things which are going to shift. Find out who you are outside of what you do, and then know your true worth, and then give yourself permission to branch out. Different seasons of different of life and different chapters of vocation. Just like I'm very appreciative of my former life, the things that I was able to do occasionally. Okay, so I celebrate those, but I'm excited about these new seasons, chapters of vocation that God has called me to. Right. Being a mom, staying home with my children, which by the way, you don't stay home. I'm a chauffeur is what I am, okay? I'm a chauffeur and I'm a professional lunch maker and I am a counselor and a therapist and all of it. So there's different seasons of vocation, but we have to know that our worth isn't in something that's going to shift, whether it's a role or a bank account or a status on Instagram, how many followers, that's all going to shift.
Yeah. I love how you brought up seasons too, because I talk about this in my book that's coming out this fall. It's all about life balance and what that looks like in different seasons of life. And one of the things that I've done, just like we were talking, Paula, about we can find our identity in our roles. I can find my identity or assessments about myself based on my season. So as an example, I have 3 little kids, 6, 4, and 1.
Mm-hmm.
Some area of my house is always...
How do you look this good with 3
kids
kids under 6? That's what I want to know.
I come to the office and then get ready. But some area of my house is always a mess. And if I'm not careful, I will look at my house and think my house is a mess. I'm a mess. And I draw statements about my identity based on the season I'm in. And I've tried to remind people, your season is where you are, not who you are.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I love how you talk about that in relation to vocation too, because there are seasons when it's right to be all in your career, seasons where it's right to be home. And it may look different for different women depending on what God's calling them to do. And just the most simple, practical thing you can ask yourself is, what's right now? What's right now?
Right.
Because when we put
Nailed
pressure
it.
on ourselves to do everything all the time, we always fall short and feel guilty. But instead to say, okay, the premise of the book is life balance isn't doing everything for an equal amount of time. It's about doing the right things at the right time. So what's right now? What's right now is for me to be in South Carolina and be home with my kids making lunches. What's right 2 years ago is for me to be up at 2 a.m. on ABC. Whatever that is. And it gives you permission to be present in the season that you're in. So I love that you brought that up. But you said something else that I think was super profound, and you just kind of flew back past it, and I want to come back to it. I think that, and you highlighted this so well, we tend to think that fear and peace are mutually exclusive. You're feeling one or the other. If you're not totally at peace, you shouldn't do it. And if you have any fear, you shouldn't do it. And you can't feel both. And I just love that you just set every single person, myself included, free to say you can feel both. And when you said that, everything in my spirit was like, yes. Because I think of every scary thing I've ever done, I had a sense of peace that I was supposed to do it. But it didn't mean I wasn't scared. I was definitely scared in doing that thing. And I love that reminder. One of the words I use as kind of interchangeable for peace is just relief. Like, which decision makes me feel relieved? Canceling that commitment or going to it, signing up for that thing, taking on that project. It's like, if I feel relief, it's almost like the tension I'd felt at resisting God's calling is released. It's like, okay, I feel relief that I'm finally being obedient. I feel relief that I'm being in line with God's will and that peace that you described, but I'm still scared. And so I love that reminder.
They're not mutually exclusive, Christy. They can and they do coexist. And you look at an exercise that I like to do to help people kind of push. It's not conquering fear, it's pressing into it, okay? Yeah. Think of the times, and like you just mentioned a couple, where you have pressed into your fear because you had a peace about it.
Yeah.
And how that made you feel, how confident you felt when you pressed into it. And you're like, you know what, fear? You didn't get a hold of me today.
That's right.
And I don't have to live with the regret of not going for this. Okay. And this can be, it's not just career and career situations. It's anything. Your fear could prevent you from trying out for the tennis team when you were in high school. It can prevent you from going to a new mom group. It could prevent you from auditioning for something. Fear has attacked me in situations big and small. One thing lately that has really helped me to kind of, again, it's not overcoming and conquering, but press into it, is I ask myself this one question, and it really kind of changes my mindset. I ask myself, what's the best thing that can happen if I go for this? Because so often I would say, what's the worst thing that can happen? And some people, like, for them, that's enough of a motivator. But for me, that freaks me out because I'm a performer. I don't like to fail. The worst thing that can happen is I fail and I humiliate myself and I embarrass myself. That's hard for me to overcome. Sure. I'm going through something right now, Christy, where I feel ill-equipped, unqualified, and totally unready. I'm launching a company. I don't know exactly when it's going to happen, hopefully by the end of the year. It's something that God put on my heart 8 years ago after I had my third kid and returned from maternity leave. And it's this company to celebrate, support, and empower women at these pivotal moments of change, whether it's postnatal or menopause or starting their period or career change. God put it on my heart years ago. And I didn't go for it because I was comfortable in my position. I had a good job. And B, I was scared because I said, I don't see myself in a different capacity. I'm a broadcaster. No one else will see me in a different capacity, right? So it's that fear. The thing that has helped me is continuing to ask myself, I have this piece that I'm supposed to go for. I'm still scared because I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not a business person, but I continue to take these steps because I have a piece about it. And God has continued to show up and bring the right people into my life, right people into the circle, the right puzzle pieces, okay? And I keep asking myself, whenever I get in my head about it, I'm like, okay, what's the best thing that can happen? What's the best thing that can happen? And it helps me get out of my own head, and it helps me press into the fear. But also knowing another exercise that I think can really help people to separate who they are from what they do is ask yourself what you're good at and what you love and what other people notice you're good at and you love. And for me, like, I'm good at asking questions and being curious. My nickname growing up was Paula 20 Questions. I like to champion people. And I'm like, you know what? Those are my natural gifts and talents. Okay, I use those in a broadcast capacity, but guess what? I can use those on a lot of different branches. And I'm going to take those things, my talents and gifts, to this new space, this entrepreneurial business space. No, I don't know anything else. But I'm taking that. Okay.
That's right.
And that's enough. Okay. That's what I'm going to take to this space passionately. I'm going to be curious. I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to champion people in this space. And I'm just going to trust that because God put this on my heart, and I'm going to press into my fear, and I'm going to follow that piece that it's going to work out. And God is calling me to this right now. In 2 years, He might be calling me to something different.
Right.
So it's seasons of vocational change, different branches. And I hold everything loosely because I know that it can shift, and I don't want my identity to come from that. I just don't. So,
well, I love that, even that example of you starting this business and how that scares you, because I think that a lot of people watching you, Paula, would think, well, she's so successful, she never gets scared, or she's accomplished so much, she never gets scared, or she has achieved this certain level, so fear doesn't happen at that level. And I just love that reminder that I think Joyce Meyer said, new levels, new devils. The more you push yourself outside your comfort zone to grow, and especially to follow God's call in your life, which is never comfortable, by the way, that you're going to experience that fear. And I think everybody watching right now is probably feeling, oh my gosh, she gets scared too. I'm in good company. I can do this as well. If she can do it, I can do it.
The devil can use that. He can make you feel isolated and that you're the only one experiencing. And that's such a lie. So often we think, I'm the only one that's feeling this way. We internalize it. Right. But in reality, fear of failure is the most common failure that we experience as humans. Yeah. It's not just me. It's not just you. Everyone experiences some sort of fear.
Right.
They do. You're not in it. It's okay to not be okay. We're all on this journey together. I bet you if you had some really open, honest conversations with those around you, they're feeling very similar. Right. And what the devil tries to do is make us feel like we're alone and that there's something wrong with us.
Right.
And we're not.
I love that. I love helping people understand even the psychology aspect of this with the imposter syndrome, of the signature line of the imposter syndrome is who are you to do this? Who are you to start this business? Who are you to move to South Carolina? Who are you to do XYZ, whatever that thing is? And if we can understand, oh, that's an actual thing. And by the way, it's a trait of high achievers. Oh, okay, yeah, I know that voice. I'm going to name it, label it, and move on anyway. And so I love as we expose the normalcy of fear, it lessens its hold it has on us, and it doesn't have to keep us stuck. We can see it, acknowledge it, and then keep going anyway. So I love that reminder. Yep. Paula, I love to end all of my conversations with a rapid fire session where I just ask you random things. Are you game? Are you okay with that?
I am totally game with that.
Okay, I'm so ready.
100%.
Okay, first question. What type of music do you listen to get yourself pumped up?
Either Eminem or Hillsong Worship.
Such variety. such a wide range we're working with here.
Yeah, pretty much like 90s white trash music or praise music. So
it's like those memes.
It's
like those memes. I love Jesus and I cuss a little.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. What is a product that you just can't live without, that you just love?
Oh my gosh, where do I start? I love mascara.
Oh, do you have a good brand? This is not an ad. I'm just curious for myself.
No, the Honest brand, the Honest company, I really, really love. I also love, I have really baby fine hair. And so I like this texturizing spray called Dry Spun Finish by Bumble and Bumble. Like if I had to go to a deserted island, I would take mascara, lip gloss, and my dry texturizing spray. Okay. And maybe some Dr. Pepper Zero.
Sure. Just the necessity.
I mean, is tequila going to be served, though? Or vodka? Like, I need to know that there's a bar there.
What are we putting
together?
Sure.
Okay. Priorities.
Yeah. Okay. What is your favorite thing to do with your kids?
Oh, you know what? I love just spending time with them, and I'm a very tactile person, so I love when my kids just sit on my lap. Like my 11-year-old son sat on my lap today, and I was like, I hope you never stop doing this. I love to cuddle with my kids. I'm physical touch, tactile, so just cuddling with them.
I love it. I love it. Okay, first thing you do when you wake up in the morning, and I'm assuming you wake up a lot later now than you used to, so maybe a new morning routine.
I don't even know how I did it because I'm like, I only got 7 hours of sleep today. I'm like, before I was getting like 4 hours.
Sure.
First thing I do, I've been trying to get up before the kids, make coffee, and have some time to myself. Usually it's quiet time. I've been writing in a journal. It's called One Line a Day because I'm not a big journaler, but I want to establish some habits. And I got this idea from Craig Rochelle to do, because he's not a journaler either, but just creating those habits. It's almost like a gratitude journal. And it's 1 line a day. That's it. It's a 5-year journal. So you can go back every year. You're seeing what you did, what you were thankful for. So I'm trying to do that.
I love that. I love that. I'm not a big journaler either. I've been trying to do just a couple lines, just something, but I give myself a smaller space and I don't feel guilty for not filling up the big space. So it's literally you only have these 2 or 3 lines. Okay. Last question. So I'm on this kick right now leading up to the fall with life balance, and life balance is one of those things that feels like a moving target. And it means different things to different people. So for you, especially in this season right now, what makes you feel balanced or feel a sense of balance that things are right in your world? What does that look like for you?
What makes me feel a sense of balance is just family time, being able to invest in my kids. And also I think it's important in every season to give yourself grace. And this is something that I haven't always been good about doing, but it's something that I've kind of learned the hard way. I think we have to give ourselves grace and not hold ourselves to the lowest version of ourselves. And doing the same thing with my kids. When they do something that I might be disappointed in, or I do something that they're disappointed in, I just say, will you give me grace in that moment? And I don't want to expect perfection from myself or from my children. And so we're big on, in this season, just expressing it, articulating it. I'll give you grace. I'll forgive you, because I'm not going to hold you to the lowest version of yourself. I don't want to judge you based upon that one moment. So giving myself grace, giving my kids grace, and really just living in that space of grace.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that's such a great word to end on too, because I know so many women and men, I'm sure, watching and listening, feel that burden of perfectionism or guilt or I'm missing the mark, 100%. I'm failing as a mom, and just that reminder to give yourself grace and extend it to everyone around you. Paula, your story is incredible, and your
Christy.
faithfulness is such an inspiration to so many people, definitely including me. I know people want to know, where can they get your book Called Out and listen to your podcast, Paula Farris Faith and Calling Podcast? Tell them where they can follow you and see what all you're up to.
Awesome. I am probably most prominently on Instagram. Like, I do a little Twitter and I do a little Facebook. I'm not super social media savvy, I'll just be honest. But if you want to contact me, it's just Paula Farris, and it's Paula Farris, FAR, 1R. IS on Instagram. You can reach out to me. I launched a new podcast with the Access More family. So I launched a new podcast in February. So that's been really fun. Yeah. It's the Paula Farris Faith and Calling podcast. I talk to people about what they're called to do, who they're called to be, and why, and just real casual conversations that's entertaining, encouraging, and empowering. And I've got a new paperback edition of the book, which is coming out the end of July. And included in it is a 6-week discussion guide where we talk about these tenets of purpose and calling and pushing past fear. But, you know, when my book initially launched, Called Out, it launched in April of 2020, like when the world was shutting down.
Right
so
then,
every distribution channel was shut down. All the orders are canceled. So we wanted to kind of give it a little bit of a birthday party, a little bit of a kind of like a coming out party, because everything was canceled. So when the paperback comes out the end of July, again, included is a free 6-week discussion guide. Because, you know, the world's opening up. We're doing life together. We're talking about these things that we learned during the pandemic, who we are outside of what we do. So excited to launch that into the world. And I'm excited to hear from all of you. I'd love to stay connected with you guys. So reach out to me whenever you want on Instagram, or just telepathically. I usually pick it up.
It's going to help so many people, especially set them free from the pressure of, I have one calling in my life, and what if I miss it? And I love your perspective that is fresh and new and so needed. So Paula, I know you're so busy, but thanks for your time and thanks for hanging out with us today.
Well, I'm just so inspired by you. 3 kids under 6. Sister, you're doing something right.
Hanging on for dear life.
Hanging on for dear life. Yeah. Giving yourself grace.
Thanks,
all right, Christy,
Paula.
God bless. Thank you.
Thank you.